Welcome back to the VR Culture Show, where we shine a light on groundbreaking VR applications and hardware. I'm Zena, and this week we dive into how VR projects transform from beyond a cool idea into reality-shifting experiences.
I'm Jamie, and I also got to experience the past, present and future of flight. But first up, here's a look at one of the most high-end pieces of hand tracking on the market right now. These are the Manus VR Gloves, a pair of highly sensitive haptic feedback gloves. The gloves I tried out use Vive trackers on the back of hands, paired with a bunch of sensors that can tell when you're bending your fingers. After I synced up my fingers, I started assembling a piece of machinery. The sensation of seeing your hand working in VR is incredible, and the vibration provided for haptic feedback can really make you feel like you're touching an object. For instance, I knew when to stop my fingers as I grabbed a part and placed it on a machine. Also, making gun fingers and hand gestures is just as satisfying as you'd expect. Now, as cool as these are, you probably won't be using them yourself anytime soon, as they're worth anywhere between $3 to $5,000. It's enterprise level gear, meaning they're mainly going to be used by businesses for more concentrated and convenient training. But it's an awesome look at the potential future of VR input.
Last month, we went to see budding VR and AR experiences looking to get a helping hand from the UK's investment scene. With VR in its early state, finding the funds needed to create life-changing experiences is tough to say the least. But it's something most creatives have to persevere with to get VR and AR where we want it to be. We're here in London at Digital Catapult's Creative XR Showcase, where 20 VR, AR and other projects are being pitched to investors in hopes of moving beyond their prototypes. This is a real make or break point for them. We spoke to Kate and Ella, ex-journalists who founded Also Known As, looking to get those in the field ready for life or death moments using situational VR training.
Hey, fake news!
As Kate will tell you, the project comes from real experience, making this all the more compelling.
Actually, this project is inspired by something that happened to me 7 years ago in Libya. I was reporting there with my husband and my cameraman, and he was seriously injured, hit by a rocket-propelled grenade. He was in a really bad way. I'd had really good training. I, in theory, knew what I was supposed to do, but in that moment, I completely lost it. I froze. Everything I'd learned was gone from my head. And so really from that moment on, we've had this feeling that there had to be a better way to train journalists, and that's what started us on this journey.
So you kind of fast forward 7 years, and this is a really dangerous time for journalists and for media. You're seeing the rise of vernacular like fake news and enemies of the people, and these might seem like they're just words, but actually they're delegitimizing fair and factual reporting everywhere.
This project started because of our background covering conflict. But actually the most dangerous place to be a journalist in America at the moment is at a Trump rally. So really we've brought our prototype much closer to home, and we're focusing around these threats from extremist groups. And as Ella said, this populist rhetoric is really impacting freedom of the press, and obviously as journalists that's something we're really passionate about.
And it doesn't stop there. This project scales far beyond visually immersive experiences.
We're at the start of an Innovate UK Smart grant, trying to integrate different biometrics into the engine to make it a seamless narrative experience. One thing that we really don't like about VR for entertainment or VR for training is that it's clunky. When you make a decision, you have to either be using controllers or pointing or actually doing an action that is really difficult to anticipate.
I'm gonna f***ing kill you, fake news scum. Get out of here, get the f*** out of here.
We're looking at things like heart rate, galvanic skin response, facial expressions, movement.
Even the stress hormone, cortisol, we're really pushing the boundaries and seeing what different things we can test, and then maybe it's a combination of different data points.
We'd like to have a set of algorithms and a workflow for integrating this into VR experiences, whether they're entertainment experiences or whether they're training experiences, and I think that's what's going to be scalable about this project. I think Creative XR has really pushed us to think about what we're doing in a different way. As journalists, as content creators, we kind of came into this thinking we had to tell one story in a particular way. Now we have 3 very different clear distribution models.
Each of the projects here have wildly differing endgames, but what they have in common is that they want to use VR and AR in a way that hasn't been used before. Ben, co-director of Megaverse, takes us to the opposite side of the spectrum from something like Under Attack to their own project, Flood.
Flood is basically, it's kind of like a dystopian experience where It's like a city on the brink of collapse. The world gets flooded. It's kind of around sort of global warming, climate change, and then you, as the audience, go on this quest with the actors to try and find dry land. It's interactive, but it's also narrative driven as well. We want Flood to be a night out, like for it to be a full experience, and it starts before you put on the headset on. So as soon as you go to the venue, you're greeted by the actors who explain the rules of play. They lead you into the play space with the headsets on. That's the really cool part, I think. We're live streaming the actors. At the moment we're using Kinect V2 sensors, volumetrically recording them and streaming them directly into the game's engine, and they'll be able to have kind of one-on-one sort of live interactive moments with them. We're looking for a technology partner. We want this to kind of be a tour, so actually as a platform it's quite lightweight. Now it's just kind of getting that next bit of funding to kind of turn it into a full experience.
We'll check in with more on these projects later in the show, but now we'll swoop on over to Jamie.
I took to the air in a journey through the history of flight and soared through what the future might look like. Creator Charlotte Mikkelborg tells us more.
So we start our story with the first person to really start to understand aerodynamics, Leonardo da Vinci. So you join like a young Leonardo da Vinci in the Tuscan countryside, 1452. And we know from Leonardo's diaries that he had this recurrent childhood dream of a bird landing on his chest and gifting him the spirit of flight. And then we take you to his workshop years later when he's like working on one of his flying machines, and you get to kind of try and pilot that.
The impressive rig was custom made for flight by Neil Coolbold, who worked on the special effects for films such as Gravity and Mission Impossible. It twists and turns along with your body movements using the Vive controllers and headset. This creates an amazing sensation of really flying.
There was like fans blowing and like just the way the scene was like really.
The movement changes with each scene, but always feels incredibly natural. Flapping my arms like a bird was quite literally uplifting, but it was hopping on board the first ever man-powered flight that really opened my eyes.
We sort of zoom you forward 400 years and you become Wilbur Wright on the wing of the Wright Flyer, and you get to pilot that first flight, man's first flight, for like 59 seconds, which is the amount of time he flew for. And then we take you fairly rapidly through like the last century of flights. You get to pilot Concorde, you get to pilot the latest A350, and then eventually we take you 100 years into the future flight to sort of pilot one version of what the future might look like.
The rig is based inside of an illuminating egg, which is meant to symbolise the birth of flight. When I touch the egg, the colours change, giving the whole setup an impressive finish. Fly has been touring since August, and you can catch it in the UK city of Newcastle for the next 2 weeks, but it's also coming to New York City in January. Look out for more information online.
Back at the Creative XR showcase, we checked out a promising new theatre production from Imitating the Dog.
It's sort of a piece about memory and about time and about history, but actually what happens is these characters discuss things from their past and they remember things differently, and it kind of hops around a little bit, and then they find themselves involved in what can best be described as sort of a time travel detective story, really, and they try to affect change. And inevitably, it's a time travel story. That can't be done really.
It won't be in VR itself, but it uses SteamVR's tracking technology to distort the reality of a play in real time.
And we're using the tools of this immersive technology, but we're removing the kind of headsets or any sort of handheld barrier. We want to create a collective experience for audiences. We spent time looking at what happens if you use sort of Vive trackers and pucks on cameras and track people in a green screen space, and then create a show which opens up the process. So we're kind of warts and all showing them everything, as it were, really.
As this project is still a couple years away from completion, there are still many tech barriers they have yet to overcome, including how to make the show as immersive and convincing as possible.
We wanted to test that technology and see if it would work and serve the story well, and it does, which is good news. And now we need to work out how we can make that an experience that's kind of beautiful for audiences to see, and that's a satisfying theatrical experience. So there's a lot of that yet to be solved, but that's good. We're on the right track.
And finally, we got an insight into how clothing reflects identity using the Hololens. Through the Wardrobe is based in a bedroom with various people's clothing, each piece directing the narrative of your experience depending on what you choose.
So Jamie, like all of the people involved in this project, has given their story generously, and they've helped to design this throughout. So these clothes are based on their clothes. Actually, Jamie donated some trousers for it, so it kind of gives that bit of authenticity. Jamie talks about what it is to be non-binary for them and the way that they kind of express that in the world. The HoloLens gives you a couple of interesting challenges. One is spatial audio. The way that we can place the audio, the voice, and the music around the room. So we've been able to design things within Unity, placing music in different positions and placing the voice as if the person is in the room with you. We've gone for something that helps to transform everyday furniture. And so within each one of those furniture items, it transforms into something else. It's really opening up discussions with potential funders and venues and seeing where that goes. Also headset makers. So, we're hoping for, hopefully some future collaboration with some headset makers.
Who knows, maybe we'll see these projects crop up again in a future VR culture show.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next month with something you're seriously not going to want to miss. So make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications with that little bell down there.